I didn't think the first "not now" meant anything permanent. We had been together long enough that the future felt implied. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just the quiet assumption that eventually we would build something stable together. The first time I proposed, it wasn't elaborate. No public moment, no spectacle. Just dinner at home, the kind of evening we'd had 100 times before. Soft music playing in the background, plates still on the table. I asked simply. She looked surprised, but not uncomfortable. She took a moment before answering. "Not now," she said gently. The way she said it made it feel temporary. Like the door was still open, just not today. She talked about timing, work stress, wanting things to feel more stable first. She said she loved me, that she saw a future, just not immediately. I told myself that patience was part of love, so I waited. Life continued almost exactly the same. We still spent weekends together. We still talked about travel plans, apartments we liked, things we might do someday. But I started noticing something. Someday was always just slightly out of reach. When I mentioned moving in together, she said maybe after the next project at work. When I suggested meeting more of each other's families, she said things were complicated right now. Nothing was ever rejected outright, just delayed. At first, I didn't question it. Relationships move at different speeds. I told myself not to rush what was already good. But time has a way of quietly revealing patterns. About 8 months after the first proposal, I asked again. Not with a ring this time. Not even with a plan. We were sitting in the car after dinner, parked outside her building. The conversation drifted into the future the way it sometimes did. I asked her directly, "Do you still see us getting married?" She looked out the window for a moment before answering. Then she said the same words. "Not now." There was no cruelty in it, no anger, just calm certainty. And something about hearing the exact same phrase twice made everything suddenly very clear. I realized "not now" wasn't about timing. It was the structure of the relationship itself. There would always be another reason to wait, another condition that needed to be met first, another moment somewhere further ahead. I sat there for a while without speaking. She assumed I was disappointed, maybe a little frustrated. Then I said something I hadn't planned to say. "Then we're done." She turned toward me quickly, surprised. "What do you mean?" I kept my voice calm. "I mean, I can't stay in something that's always waiting to start." She didn't panic. Not really. She reached for my hand like she always did when conversations became tense. "You're overthinking this," she said softly. "We're good. We just don't need to rush." But the strange thing was, I didn't feel rushed. For the first time in a long time, I felt clear. I dropped her off at her building. We hugged the same way we always did. She assumed the conversation would fade like other disagreements had before. That after a few days, things would settle back into their normal shape. But they didn't. Over the next week, I quietly began separating the parts of our lives that had slowly merged together. We had talked for months about moving into a larger apartment together. I withdrew my application from the lease. I canceled the joint travel plans we had been discussing for the fall. I stopped arranging my schedule around weekends that were automatically assumed to belong to us. None of it was dramatic, just small decisions returning to their original owners. About 10 days later, she called. Her voice sounded different. "I heard you pulled out of the apartment application," she said. "Yeah." There was a long pause. "You were serious?" It wasn't a question. I was. Another silence. I could almost hear the moment something shifted for her. The quiet realization that the rhythm she had relied on, the patience, the waiting, had actually ended. "I didn't think you meant it like that," she said eventually. "I know." She wasn't angry, mostly just unsettled. We met once after that, about a month later. By coincidence more than intention, a small coffee shop we both use sometimes. The conversation was calm. No accusations. No attempts to convince each other of anything. She admitted something quietly. "I thought time was always on our side," she said. I understood what she meant. For a long time I had thought that too. That patience automatically proved commitment. That waiting long enough would eventually transform uncertainty into certainty. But sometimes waiting just stretches uncertainty into years. When we left the cafe, there was no dramatic goodbye. Just a quiet hug in the doorway. As I walked away, I realized something strange. Ending the relationship hadn't felt like a victory, but it also didn't feel like a loss. It felt like finally stepping out of a room where the clock had been paused for too long.